In this video lecture, we'll discuss the psychodynamic perspective on depression, including both Freud's historical explanation for depressive symptoms, as well as more modern psychodynamic models of depression. From a historical perspective, Freud's original conceptualization of depression was that it represented anger turned inward, or what he called introjection. So when an individual is experiencing anger in their unconscious that is unacceptable to acknowledge in conscious awareness, for example, if you are angry at your parents for not caring for you appropriately or meeting your needs, or if you are angry at your spouse for not spending enough time with you and not being a good partner. If your superego does not find that anger to be acceptable, so maybe you are in a culture where one of your cultural guidelines is that you love your parents and you're respectful of your parents and you don't get angry at them, or that romantic relationships need to be positive, that you always need to feel love for your partner, your superego might identify that anger as unacceptable. So as a defense mechanism to keep that unacceptable anger from reaching your conscious awareness, that anger would be turned inward and directed at the self, what Freud would call introjection. So from a Freudian perspective, the symptoms of depression, feelings of guilt and worthlessness and low self-concept and the low mood and physical symptoms that go along with that result from the defense mechanism of directing that unacceptable anger towards the self. In contrast, the more modern psychodynamic approach focuses on patterns in interpersonal relationships. So this is building on the psychodynamic assumption that patterns in our interpersonal relationships are driven by our early childhood experiences, and that many of these patterns are shaped by factors that are outside of our conscious awareness, but this model relies less on traditional psychodynamic concepts like defense mechanisms and introjection. So the modern psychodynamic approach emphasizes the fact that many depressive episodes have their onset in the context of some kind of interpersonal stressor or interpersonal difficulty, and the role of difficulties in interpersonal relationships in maintaining those symptoms of depression. So from a modern psychodynamic approach, we seek to explain depressive symptoms by identifying the patterns in a person's interpersonal interactions that have helped lead to the development and maintenance of their depressive symptoms, and understanding how those patterns in their relationships might have been shaped by their early childhood experiences, particularly with their caregivers. So some characteristic patterns that we sometimes observe in individuals with depression are rejection sensitivity. So rejection sensitivity is characterized by being very attuned to negative evaluation or perceived rejection from other people. So interpreting perhaps maybe even minor interpersonal interactions. So somebody doesn't respond to a text immediately, or you tell your partner a story and they don't appear to be listening or are not giving you the response that you want. Being very sensitive and experiencing a lot of negative mood in response to that perceived rejection. And another pattern that can interact with that rejection sensitivity is reassurance seeking. So this distress that a person experiences when they feel that they have been rejected, they respond by seeking reassurance from their partner or another person in that relationship. Paradoxically, this can actually lead to more interpersonal stress. So it can lead to a pattern of interpersonal interactions that we can call demand withdrawal interactions. So the person who is experiencing negative mood, who feels rejected, may seek reassurance. So for example, if somebody has not responded to their text, they might send a bunch of texts very quickly and say, "Are you mad at me? Did I do something? I'm really sorry. Is everything okay?" And often this reassurance-seeking behavior will be unpleasant to the person who is experiencing it. So they may have felt that they were not being rejecting. Maybe they were just in a meeting at work, or they were in class, or they didn't have their phone with them, and suddenly they are pulling up their phone at the end of a meeting and seeing 15 texts. They might feel annoyed, and that might lead them to withdraw. That withdrawal might be perceived as rejection, and the person who is rejection sensitive might then experience more negative mood and then start engaging in more reassurance seeking behavior. So this pattern of demand withdrawal of this reassurance seeking behavior can impair the relationship further, which would be very distressing to this individual with this high level of rejection sensitivity. So that's one possible psychodynamic conceptualization of depression. And in general, what we are looking for are patterns in interpersonal relationships that are related to someone's experience of negative mood and their depressive symptoms, and then attempting to understand how those patterns in interpersonal relationships might reflect some unconscious patterns that were established in early childhood relationships.